A Life in the Sky by Kate Scott. A life in the sky. I am an Arctic tern. I live in the air. My home is up in the wide, wide sky. I fly past cloud after cloud after cloud. The Arctic tern spends almost its whole life flying. It can even eat and sleep while it flies. During its life, the Arctic tern flies 3 times as far as the moon and back. That's 2.4 million kilometers, 1.5 million miles. This small bird only weighs as much as a cup of sugar, around 100 to 115 grams. But it can fly for 17,700 kilometers, 11,000 miles, at a time. The Arctic tern's journey. When the tern goes to the Arctic, it flies over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, to the Arctic. When the tern goes to Antarctica, it either flies along the African coast or follows the South American coast. To Antarctica. The Arctic. Greenland. Africa. Antarctica. South America. Atlantic Ocean.
Question. This book says that the Arctic tern lives in the air. A bird usually sits in a nest and flies to catch food. Why do they say the Arctic tern lives in the air? Example answer. The book says the bird lives in the air because the bird spends almost its whole life flying. It can even eat and sleep while flying. They have to fly a very long distance.
Waiting. I watch and I wait while my feathers fall. I wait to soar into that wide, wide sky. In December, January and February, the Arctic tern rests on the sea ice in Antarctica. While it is there, it molts its wing feathers. The Arctic tern sometimes loses its feathers so quickly that it can't fly at all for a little while. Antarctica contains 90% of the world's ice, but because it hardly ever rains here, it can be called a desert. It is very difficult for wildlife to survive in the middle of Antarctica because it is so cold and dry. This is why the animals of Antarctica live in the ocean or by the coast. Some fish in Antarctica have a special antifreeze chemical in their blood which stops them from freezing, but it doesn't protect them from the Arctic tern. The Arctic tern spends much of its life flying between the Arctic and Antarctica. The Arctic. Antarctica.
Questions. 1. Where does the Arctic tern spend December, January, and February? Example answer. The Arctic tern spends December, January, and February in Antarctica. 2. What does the Arctic tern do in Antarctica? Example answer. The Arctic tern molts the feathers on its wings while in Antarctica and catches fish for survival.
Taking flight. The wind lifts my wings. I trace the edge of land and sea, then cross the ocean to another coast. I am skimming the sky. The Arctic tern leaves Antarctica and flies north towards the Arctic. It doesn't fly in a straight line, though. First, it follows the coast of southern Africa. Then it flies across the Atlantic Ocean to the coast of South America. Southern Africa. South America. No one is sure why the birds take this zigzagging route. It might be so that they don't have to fly into the wind, which makes flying much harder work. When the Arctic tern is flying north, it travels about 520 kilometers, 323 miles per day. It would take about 2 weeks for most people to walk that far, or even longer. Plunge dive and surface dip. I dive through air to dip in the waves. I'm quick and sharp and bold. I grab my fish. When they need food, Arctic terns hover over the water, then zoom down to grab fish or shrimp from the surface of the water. They sometimes eat insects as they fly. Sometimes Arctic terns steal fish from other birds. They do this by flying towards them very fast. The other bird is surprised and drops its fish. Arctic terns usually only dive 50 centimeters underneath the waves. The Arctic tern stops over the Atlantic Ocean to catch fish. The tern needs lots of energy to fly such a long way. Plunge diving. Surface dipping. Atlantic Ocean. A sea swallow. Soon I will reach the other side of the world. I will find a family of my own flock to fly with across the wide sky. By the time the Arctic tern reaches the Arctic, it will have flown 25,700 kilometers, 15,969 miles. It will have been almost constantly in the air for 40 days. The Arctic. The Arctic tern is often called the sea swallow. Like the swallow, it has long, slender wings and long tail feathers. The tern's wings are about 80 centimeters across. Finding a mate. I see her and show her how I fly. I soar, I swoop, I chase. The Arctic tern arrives in Greenland, where the terns gather to mate. Most Arctic terns mate for life. They may be together for as long as 30 years. Arctic terns attract a mate by showing off their flying skills. Then the male catches a fish and offers it to the female. Greenland. The terns find a place to have their eggs. The female lays her eggs in a shallow hole in the ground called a scrape. The birds line the scrape with shells, grass, or little stones. It takes around 24 days for the eggs to hatch.
Question. Where does the Arctic tern find a mate to lay eggs? Example answer. They find their mates in Greenland and lay their eggs in a shallow hole in the ground.
First flight. I feed my children to make them strong. They grow and grow. One day, they stretch their wings. I show them how to lift on the wind, how to fly to the clouds. Once the eggs have hatched, the parents feed their babies until they are old enough to fly and feed themselves. With such a long journey in front of them, these baby birds need to grow strong. Defending the family. Nothing will hurt my family. If I have to, I will attack. I swoop to strike with my sharp beak. Arctic terns watch out for any danger to their family. If they see a gull or an Arctic fox who might eat their chicks, they dive down and attack. People trying to watch or photograph Arctic terns have also been landed on and pecked. hard. To the sky again. It is time to leave, time to take to the sky. But now I am not alone. We will soar together. We will fly to find another summer. When the Arctic tern and its family are ready to fly, they set off with a colony of terns and fly all the way back to Antarctica. A few years ago, tiny tracking devices were attached to some Arctic terns. They proved that the Arctic tern flies further than any other migrating bird. Antarctica.
Question. Talk about the Arctic tern's life. Example answer. The Arctic tern spends most of its life flying in the sky. In December, January, and February, it spends time in Antarctica. It is summer there. In the spring, from the northern hemisphere's perspective, they fly north toward the Arctic. They first fly to the coast of southern Africa, and then fly across the Atlantic Ocean to the coast of South America, and north to the Arctic. The Arctic tern is a small, lightweight bird, but it repeatedly performs incredible journeys all the time throughout its life. Around the world and back again, I am a bird of flight. My home is up in the wide, wide sky. I fly past cloud after cloud after cloud. The Arctic tern probably spends more time in daylight than any other animal. When the days get shorter in Antarctica, it leaves and heads north. When the days get shorter in the Arctic, it heads south. Maybe it loves the daylight, and that is why it spends so much time in the air. The Arctic tern travels farther than any other bird in the world. Its life is one amazing journey.
Glossary. Antarctica. The area near the South Pole. Arctic. The area near the North Pole. Colony. A group of animals. Hatch. To come out of an egg. Hover. To stay in the same place in the air. Mate. To have babies. A partner to have babies with. Migrating. Traveling to a different place. Molts. Loses old feathers once a year so new ones can grow. Tracking devices. Machines or tools that follow the movements of something or someone. Zigzagging. Twisting, not straight.